Days passed, and whispers spread through the city. Some mock him for being seen with a homeless girl. Others speculated he had gone mad after his illness. His business partners frowned, worried his softened image would weaken their empire. But Adewale felt something shifting within him, something irreversible. For the first time, his mornings did not begin with arrogance but with reflection. He looked at Ijeoma and saw not her torn dress but her unshaken spirit. She became a reminder that pride is fragile, but kindness endures. He felt fate had given him a second chance, and he dared not waste it. Yet shadows lingered at the edge of his change. His empire was restless, his relatives suspicious, his staff divided. They could not understand why a billionaire who once mocked beggars now walked slowly behind a child who had nothing. They whispered about weakness, about lost control, about dangers to his legacy. Adewale heard them, but he no longer cared. He knew storms would come, resistance would rise, betrayal would sharpen its knives. But he also knew something stronger waited within him. Compassion had cracked his shell, and from that crack light had entered. The road ahead would test it. That night, as the mansion settled into silence, Adewale sat alone in his study. Papers lay scattered, contracts unsigned, deals unattended. He ignored them all. Instead, he wrote a single sentence in his leather notebook. True wealth is not money, but a heart that shows love and gratitude. His hands trembled as he wrote it, as though the act itself was defiance against everything he had once been. He closed the notebook slowly, his chest heavy with the knowledge that the next chapter of his life would be different. Redemption had begun, but its cost would soon be revealed. When Ijeoma first entered the mansion, the air itself seemed to resist her. The polished floors reflected her torn dress, the chandeliers mocked her dusty hair, and the servants' eyes followed her like hawks circling prey. She felt small, almost invisible, yet every whisper reminded her she was painfully seen. Adewale walked ahead of her, his steps slow, carrying the weight of unspoken guilt. The guards shifted uncomfortably at their posts, confused by the reversal of roles. The gates that once chased her now opened wide. She stepped inside, not as a beggar at the edge, but as an uninvited guest. The kitchen smelled of roasted meats, rich spices, and sweet bread, but hunger was drowned by unease. Some servants sneered, their loyalty tethered to old habits of cruelty. Others pitied her, unsure how long she would last. Ijeoma kept her eyes low, clutching the hem of her dress, heart pounding. Adewale watched in silence, his chest burning with shame as he realized how harshly she must have seen this house from the outside. To her, the mansion was not luxury but a fortress of rejection. Now, it had reluctantly become her home, though its walls carried more judgment than welcome. At night, Ijeoma was led to a room larger than any space she had ever known. The bed stood high, wrapped in clean sheets that smelled of lavender. A window opened to gardens where flowers glowed beneath moonlight. Yet she did not sleep. She curled on the edge of the mattress, afraid of leaving stains on fabric too pure for her touch. She stared at the ceiling, bewildered by silence too heavy after years of traffic noise and dripping water. The softness of the bed felt like a trick. She wondered if morning would bring her back to the bridge again. Adewale paced his study restlessly. He could feel the house resisting her presence. The walls seemed to whisper reminders of class, of boundaries never meant to be crossed. His relatives would not understand. His staff would not approve. Yet he knew he could not turn back. The image of her small hands holding his unconscious body haunted him like scripture etched into stone. Pride begged him to return her to the streets, to protect his reputation, but gratitude burned hotter. He had lived years as a king of wealth, yet it was a child of dust who would save him. The news spread quickly. By the end of the week, society whispered about the billionaire and the homeless girl. Tabloids spun headlines mocking his decision, socialites laughed in hidden corners, and business associates murmured about weakness. Photographers lurked at the mansion gates, hungry for a scandal. They captured images of Ijeoma peeking timidly through iron bars, her face splashed across front pages with cruel captions. The city devoured the story, not out of kindness but for entertainment. To them, Adewale's act was not compassion but madness. And Ijeoma, in her ragged clothes, was painted as a stain on his legacy. School presented new challenges. Adewale enrolled her in one of the city's finest institutions, but wealth could not shield her from cruelty. Her classmates mocked her accent, laughed at her patched shoes, and whispered about her living under bridge. They called her names that sliced like knives. Teachers, though polite, treated her with pity rather than respect. Each day became a battlefield where her resilience was tested. She returned to the mansion in silence, her eyes weary, her spirit bruised but unbroken. Adewale noticed the change in her steps and felt guilt burn deeper, fueling his determination to protect her. The backlash reached boardrooms. Investors questioned his decisions, claiming charity was a distraction from profit. Some withdrew partnerships, warning that his softened heart made him vulnerable. Even within his own family, anger brewed. Cousins and siblings who once relied on his generosity turned cold, whispering that he had been bewitched by a street rat. Relatives who had dined at his table now plotted to distance themselves, fearing his compassion would drain their inheritance. Adewale listened in silence, but beneath his calm exterior, storms gathered. He knew compassion was costly, yet he also knew it was the only wealth worth keeping. Late one night, he stood by Ijeoma's door, listening to the faint sound of her muffled sobs. His chest tightened, his fists clenched, but he did not enter. He had built a mansion of walls so high that even now he feared stepping through one of them. But her sobs pierced him more than any insult ever had. They echoed the truth, that society's cruelty weighed heavier on a child than death weighed on man. He realized compassion was not enough if it remained hidden in silence. To protect her, he would have to fight not just with wealth, but with courage. Slowly, Adewale began to change his routines. Where he once roared past bus stops, now he slowed, rolling down his window to hand food and money to beggars. Where he once mocked workers, now he greeted them with nods of respect. His guards, confused, struggled to adjust, but soon followed his lead. The city watched in disbelief. The proud billionaire had turned into a man who bent to help strangers lift loads, who sat quietly in churches at dawn, who walked among those he once scorned. Some praised him as reborn, others dismissed it as performance. But for Adewale, it was real. In the quiet of his study, he wrote letters to old rivals, apologizing for betrayals buried under profit. He donated to orphanages, hospitals, and shelters, not with cameras flashing but in silence. Yet still, the city doubted. For every act of kindness, whispers rose, accusing him of guilt rather than sincerity. But Adewale pressed on, his resolve fed not by reputation but by Ijeoma's presence. Each time he saw her smile faintly through her pain, he knew the change was worth it. Compassion, once foreign to him, now became his anchor. His empire no longer defined him, his heart did. But doubt remained. Sometimes, alone at night, he wondered if his transformation was truly born of gratitude or merely fear of death. Would he have changed had he not collapsed at those iron gates? Was his compassion real, or just desperation painted in noble colors? These questions gnawed at him, unrelenting. He looked at Ijeoma, searching for answers in her steady eyes. She never spoke them, but her endurance reminded him. Compassion cannot be measured by its origins, only by its persistence. If he continued to choose love, day after day, perhaps his redemption would not be a mask but truth. The morning sun glowed gently against the mansion's tall iron gates, once a barrier of pride but now a doorway of hope. The sleek white Range Rover Sport purred softly as Adewale held the wheel, his once cold face now softened with warmth. Beside him sat Ijeoma, no longer the ragged child from under the bridge, but his daughter, her hair neatly braided, her uniform pressed, her eyes shining with a new kind of confidence. She clutched her school bag tightly, nervous yet excited, while Adewale's chest swelled with a pride born not of wealth, but of transformation. As they drove through the streets, the same city that once mocked him now stared in disbelief. Windows lowered, whispers followed, but Adewale did not care. His smile was genuine, his laughter light, his spirit free. At every stoplight, he glanced at Ijeoma with a father's love, remembering the day she had cradled his broken body with her small hands. Now it was he who carried her future with both strength and joy. The Range Rover that once splashed mud upon her now carried her with dignity, a chariot of redemption, turning past cruelty into a road paved with compassion. When they arrived at the school gates, Ijeoma hesitated, her eyes wide at the sight of children in bright uniforms, their laughter echoing across the compound. Adewale placed a steady hand on her shoulder, his smile reassuring. Together they stepped out, and whispers rose among parents and teachers alike. Yet Adewale's head remained high. With each step, he declared silently to the world that compassion was his greatest inheritance. He watched Ijeoma walk through the gates, her steps trembling at first, then firm with courage. His heart swelled, knowing that in her, The future of his wealth had finally found meaning. As the Range Rover rolled away, Adewale laughed for the first time in years, not out of arrogance but gratitude. The mansion no longer felt like a fortress, but a home. The empire no longer felt like a burden, but a blessing. And Ijeoma, the girl once despised, had become the key to his survival and the crown jewel of his legacy. Pride had nearly destroyed him, but love had rebuilt him. He understood now that true wealth was never counted in coins or contracts, but in the smile of a child who once had nothing, yet gave him everything. Moral of the story. 1. Pride blinds, but kindness opens doors to miracles. Wealth without compassion is emptiness, but a humble heart can change destinies. 2. Never despise anyone because of their condition today. The one you mock may hold the key to your survival tomorrow. 3. True wealth is not money, but love, gratitude, and compassion. Gold fades, empires crumble, but kindness leaves a legacy that time cannot erase.